Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldscythe. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will continue reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands from Archive of Our Own called The Rescue Party. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. Also, pardon any noises I cannot edit out because I'm on a holiday and I cannot control my cats or my grandparents. On with the show. The Rescue Party by Aeolian Sands. Chapter 34. Barrel Racing. Maedhros ran through the corridors of a crumbling Nargothrond. Etched archways splintered and massive chunks of marble fell from the ceiling. Morin got the plans to bury us alive. A figure barreled into the corridor just ahead of him, skidding to a stop. Nelio! Garantir shouted. Have you found them? Not yet, he answered, and soon the two Noldor lords were running side by side. They must be in the smithies. Of course they are in the smithies. Morin didn't have to state the obvious. Findulas and Lúthien are getting the rest of the people to the surface. I'm thankful that Findarato and the army have already left, not to mention Amile and our aunts and uncles. I'm not sure the surface is any safer. Plus, we could have used Amile to knock some sense into Kurva. Morio shrugged and spun to dodge a falling piece of ceiling. Still, having the host gone means fewer people to worry about. For now, Maedhros agreed as they approached the iron door to the smithy. He twisted the handle to find it locked. The blasted full. Atarinke Kurofinue, open this door right now! Sorry, Uncle Maedhros, we have to finish this! We're almost done! The determined voice of Celebrimbor answered. The sound of hammering resounded, and Maedhros considered how long it would take to find Lúthien or Findula so that they could sing the lock open. However, perhaps only the second time in his life, fate was on the side of Maedhros Feanorion, or perhaps it was simply doom catching up. The wall beside the door cracked and splintered as the earth was racked with another round of tremors. Without wasting a moment, Maedhros kicked in the crumbling stone and leapt into the smithy. He found his brother and nephew furiously shaping arrowheads. Time is up! We have to leave! He shouted, reaching to grab Celebrimbor's arm. His nephew yanked it back. No! We need this! Dragons cannot be killed with common steel! Perhaps not, but you can be killed when the mountain comes down on your head. Gorfin then looked up, and his eyes burned like those of their father. Then help, Lord Brother! I know you learned smithcraft, if not from our father in Valinor, then from Sauron in Angamando. Here, and he tossed a hammer at his elder brother. Help us finish this batch so that our people will have hope against those scaled beasts. Or are you so cruel to save your own skin only? Something twisted in Maedhros' gut on hearing Gurfin's contrived words. More than just a faithless jab at his honor was the truth in the statement before, a truth he had never revealed. Because while his father had eventually released him from the study of jewelsmithing and metalcraft when he showed no signs of prodigy, Sauron had not been so kind. Look what we have here, a son of Feanor at our own forge. Then the whips had cracked and the laughter had begun. Maedhros shoved those dark memories down. He shouldered Gurfin aside and with brutal efficiency began to hammer and shape the arrowhead with his left hand only. Within seconds he was done and reaching for the next one. You would have been killed horribly, Kurvo, Maedhros said. You take too long, put too much thought into the crafting. Efficiency is everything in the forges of our enemy. Soon he had finished another 3. What the hell is going on here? Maedhros refused to look up on hearing Gelekorm's voice. With the stump of his right arm, he swept aside 2 more arrowheads into the sack that Morio held. Nelio is being obstinate, Kurva answered. Kurofinue, the forge is collapsing, Maedhros answered through gritted teeth as he shaped the last of the metal with quick raps of the hammer. The newly minted arrowhead was still hot to the touch when he tossed it in with the others. There, are you content at last? Let us live before the bodies of 4 sons of Fëanor are found in an Errol-forsaken forge. As if to punctuate that statement, the chimney of the fireplace collapsed. Maedhros turned his back as bricks tumbled and fell, wincing as one hit his shoulder. As the dust settled, he saw beams of sunlight filtering from above the debris mound. Thank Ole Findarada wasn't a complete idiot and placed the smithies close to ground level. Celebrimbor nimbly raised up the shattered bricks. It opens to the outside, he said. Maedhros didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed Gorofin's arm and pulled his brother away from the falling city, Gelagorm and Garanthir following behind. As they emerged into what had once been a land of rolling hills, Maedhro stopped and stared awestruck. Yet his amazement was not without a cause, for great crevices had appeared throughout the land like cracks in a mirror. Molten rivers of fire ran through the washes between hills. And from the east came a fell shriek, not unlike the scream of Morgoth when Ungoliant had ensnared him. All 5 elves turned to see a black wing rise from beyond the hills of Nargothrond to cover the sky. That's Finrod's position, Maedhro realized as fear threatened to grab his heart. Looks like we will be needing those arrowheads after all, Gabriel noted in slow disbelief, for never before had any seen a beast so great. What's that? Garanthir asked, as he was looking not at the dragon wing that blotted out the eastern sky, but towards where the river Narog now appeared to be running backward, its furious waters falling into a great sinkhole near the gates of Nargothrond itself. There, amongst the rapids, was a ship with wide sails. Faint singing could be heard on the wind. Now the rigging is all tore, and the ship creaks all the more, but my love, you're the only one I adore. Ever I hope to see you in holy Valinor. It was a woman's voice. Some brazen lady was joyfully sailing unnatural waters that raced backward to a pit of hell itself. Maedhro marveled as he took in the sight of an Eleth with light brown hair at the helm, her smile a mile wide as she navigated the small boat ever forward. The foolish girl, Gelagorm snapped. She will go down over the edge of that crater, and who knows if there's a bottom. It's not just a girl, Gorofin noted. There's a young Elrond on board too. He's hanging on to the rails for dear life. Maedhro, he looks a little bit like you when you get dragged onto an adventure. Hurry, if we run, we might be able to help them. The 5 took across the rolling hills towards the great crater. Maedhro snuck a look back at the lone ship and saw the Elrond his brother had noticed. Poor kid does look like Morio. He was holding the railing with both hands and kneeling, perhaps praying for deliverance from the madwoman at the tiller. The fact that the continent was disintegrating was not lost on Andreth. It seemed part for the course that her doom would be to avoid mortal death, only to immediately meet an immortal one in a sinking land of fire. But if her fate was to die, then she would do so, but only after she saw her beloved once more. Thus, when the land shifted and suddenly tilted downward and the river Narog started flowing west towards Nargothrond, she had been thankful for the extra speed it would grant their little vessel and ordered a white-faced Gil-galad to put the sails at full mast. She was aware that they were heading straight for what appeared to be a giant sinkhole. She told Gil-galad to hang on and be ready to use the halyard line to swing clear of the river and jump to land when the time was right. Hey! Strong voice yelled from the shore. Andreth turned to see 5 elves, 3 with dark hair, 1 with hair like fire, and 1 with locks of silver blonde running along the bank. Hail, Fëanorian lords of the east! She called, wondering briefly if she had ever seen an elf lord run. Then Andreth remembered that Agnor and Angrod frequently fled from little Finduilas, and that Finrod was oftentimes chased by his paperwork-wielding advisor. You're heading for a waterfall! The river ends in a great crater! The young one called. It must have been Lord Gorofin's son. We plan to jump! She called, then figured that now was as good time as ever. Hallgate! Now's the time! Grab a line and swing it on over the edge! Gil-galad finally stood on shaky legs. You first, my lady, she said. I shall be the last one off. His brave words were as sweet as his promise of friendship had been earlier. Andreth had no doubt he would grow into the finest of lords, but he was not made for the sea. Now, Hallgate, if you respect me as a lady, then respect my decision. He nodded then and grabbed the halyard line. He ran with it, leaping over the bulwark just as the hull hit a boulder in the river. The boat jerked to a stop as it impaled itself on the stone, but Gil-galad was already in the air. He let go of the rope as it arched over the bank, landing just as his father ran up to help him. Andreth smiled for a moment, then immediately frowned as the wood beneath her groaned. The vessel was rapidly taking on water, and the wooden craftsmanship would not last long against the forces of the river. She jumped onto the now sloping deck and looked for the line that Gil-galad had used when the mast splintered above her and fell, rendering the line useless. Andreth! Gil-galad called from the shore. A shot of fear ran through her veins. She could never make the jump across the raging river, and she stood even less of a chance of swimming against the rapids. Wait! Someone called from the bank. It was followed by a sharp whistle. Looking up, she saw Garantir kneel next to his son. Did he know that this child was his own? And the other Feanorians standing around them. Kelegorm, the blond one, was looking away, looking for something amid the fiery hills. Then a great howl, as if from a wolf, broke through the air. Huan, the fabled wolf-hound from Valinor, and what appeared to be an actual wolf pup, came bounding across the broken land. Without hesitation, Huan leapt mightily from the bank and landed on the ship's deck. He stared at her with intelligent eyes, and Andreth knew at once what she was to do. The hound crouched down, and she pulled herself onto its back. Then they were flying. Huan landed on the sandy bank and let her off. The wolf was sitting by Lord Kelegorm's side and wagging its tail in excitement. Well, that was a fun voyage, Andreth told the gathered elves, dusting off her hands. Thank you, noble Huan. She curtsied to the hound. And thank you too, Lord Kelegorm. It's an honor to be of aid, the Feanorian replied politely, bowing slightly. But I can't help but wonder what an elf like yourself is doing sailing towards that pit of doom. And how do you know us? How could I not? You are the lords of the East, after all. As for your first question, well, the land tilted so that uphill became downhill, one might say, and I was on an errand that I did not wish to be distracted from, she replied. She noticed that Maedhros had a wry look on his face. Is something the matter, Lord Maedhros? Nothing. I'm just amused, that is all. How can you speak so nonchalantly about the breaking of this land? If it still stands, I will invite you to Himring, where your bravery will inspire many. Andreth wondered then if this was the breaking of the world or just precursor to it. But before she could ponder that thought further, Kurofin cleared his throat. May I ask what this errand of such importance is for you to have risked your life and that of your young servant to complete it? There was a flicker in Andreth's eyes. Oh, he's not my servant. He's my crewmate. But more than that, he's the reason for my errand. Well, one of them anyway. She shrugged and found that she could not contain her smile anymore. Lord Garanthir, I present to you Halgeir, your son. Oh, how Andreth wished she could have painted that moment in time. Jaws dropped, and even stern Maedhros looked white as a sheet. Kelegorm made a choking sound. All looked at Garanthir kneeling in the sand, his son at his side, and none could deny the similarities between them. Gilgalad's hair was lighter, his skin clearer, but they shared the same Noldorin jawline, the same fine eyebrows, and the same look of awe and fear. Garanthir turned and looked at his son, and at once a great love filled his heart. A love that he had been running from, a love that he had been fearing, terrified that it would only bring about even greater tragedy. If I ever see him, he will be safe, had been his mantra for so many decades. If I never see my child, I can bear to be separate from him. And those words had been true. He had been able to keep his distance from his son. But now he knew that to live without him again would destroy what was left of his already broken heart. For here before him was a living proof that he had loved another with his whole being. And likewise, here was proof that she had loved him too. Here was one who was the best part of them both, one who represented a future where there was no oath, no strife between kin. Here was his perfect, only son. Artanaro. He whispered the name he had told Haleth to give him on the night they had parted forever. And then his son had turned and embraced him there on the sand as the world itself was falling apart. Gilgalad had never thought much of his father who had left him. He had imagined that he was a cruel elf with a stone-cold heart. But he had been wrong. The one kneeling before was neither cruel nor evil. No, it was someone who was broken. Someone who had long ago shattered on the inside, but still went through the motions of living. Someone who desperately needed a hug. Hello, Athar, Gilgalad whispered into his father's shoulder as they embraced, and he did not comment on how his father trembled at the word. At last, they ended the hug, and Garanthir looked at him with teary eyes. I'm sorry, my son. I never wished to meet you, for I'm cursed, you see. My fate is tied to that of a jewel, and I can never be free. But now, I do not know if I can let you go. Gilgalad shook his head. Nonsense. I know little of what you speak, but I do know that there is always hope, even in the darkest of times. Let us face what comes together. But, no, I mean what I said. and he stood and offered a hand to his father. You are my Adar, and I love you, and that's the end of it, I do believe. Karanthir stood, and they hugged once more. Spoken like your mother, he whispered. Kilakorn just couldn't take this anymore. Morio, you have a son? Karanthir finally turned to face his brother, a guilty look on his face. I didn't even realize you had a wife! Kilakorn explained, looking very flustered. Well, I am sorry that gossip didn't always reach your lands, fair brother, but yes, I did have a wife. And together we had a son. This is Ardanara, or Gilgalad as his mother named him. Gilgalad bowed his head. Greetings, uncles. Although my mother also called me Halgeir, for she was one of the Haladin. Morio, you loved a mortal? Asked Gurufin in shock. Hey, it isn't as unusual as you think, the lady replied. Gilgrim frowned. Wait, are you the wife? No, but I was born mortal. And I do love an elf of the House of Finwë, and he loved me too, she finished softly. If it's Gano, Madras warned. No, I love fair Iganara. Tell me where I might find him. Gillicorn realized that the silence was damning. But how were they to find words when so many alarming truths were being revealed all at once? Finally, he stammered out an answer. Well, we are actually on our way to find him ourselves. He's with Vindarado's host, and they fight a great dragon. Gillipimpar opened the sack of arrowheads. My father and I made these. They can pierce the scales of those lizards. Andret's face was set in grim determination. If we are to fight dragons, then so be it. Let's go save those golden Arafin ones now, shall we? Finarfin and Fingolfin stood on the edge of fields of fire. Their horses had spooked the minute the ground had splintered. Both kings were thrown like sacks of potatoes, and while Anare had tried to keep her seat, her panicking horse had set off in the direction of the stables at a gallop, and she had been forced to jump from its back. Now the only one who still had a mount was Eowyn. Why do animals like you so much? Nerdanel asked as she rubbed her sore shoulder. She had nearly taken a boulder to the face when she had lost control of her mare. Eowyn shrugged. They know that I'm kind to them. The rest of us are kind, Anare declared. Yes, but you can be terrifying too. Well, you try raising Fëanor's sons, Nerdanel defended herself. Or Nalos. Hey, Fingolfin turned. Am I hearing vain attempts at making this my fault? He teased his wife. It is your fault. You and Naro, partners in crime forever, Anare answered. Fingolfin bristled. Most characterize us as sworn enemies. There are several stages of friendship. First, you are polite acquaintances, then adventuring companions, and finally you hate each other's guts, but will still trek across the field of molten fire to save one another, Anare pointed out. Nothing to do said field of molten fire. Fingolfin huffed. It's still all Naro's fault. Well, where there is fire, there is also a Fëanor, Nerdanel acknowledged. How are we to get to Angamando? Finarfin asked. He was still gazing out to the north. Without horses, it will take us far too long. Our brother will have gotten himself killed by the time we reach him. What's that? Fingolfin pointed at the silver thread that weaved between the great streams of lava. It looks like water, Eowyn declared excitedly. Perhaps one of the springs in the hills of Nargothrond burst. If we can find a sturdy log, Fingolfin and Finarfin simultaneously experienced the same horrible flashback. For long moments, they stood silent. Until finally Finarfin spoke. Long have I stood against travel on water by way of logs, he began in a storyteller's voice. Oh, do save us, your hyperbole. Eowyn elbowed him. Let us go, now lest the water dries. Finarfin quickly prayed to Ulmo that log travel was not to be his destiny after all, and that he help keep all of them safe. Nobody did normally get agitated, but extraordinary times called for extraordinary feelings. He watched impatiently as Ulmo flicked his line out into the sea. Should we be helping? Nama asked at last, ignoring the sounds of the floundering land behind them and the panicked shouts of the elves of the Falas who were in the midst of evacuating to sea. We've already helped more than we should, and now the entire continent is being torn asunder. You might as well go back to Mandos. It may be about to get rather crowded. Righteous fury ignited in the Vala's chest. No, the whole point of this was to get the elves out! He stood. I am helping them. I want my peace. If I have to wrestle Melkor myself, then I will do so. Tulkas will stand jealous for all of eternity, but I care not if I get my home back. Ulmo's hand was on his wrist. You will just end up killing the children. Listen, Namo, there are ways we can help. We do not have to sit useless on the Taniquetil, but wrestling Melkor is not that way. He will likely only kill or enslave you. Me? Yes. And then we have much bigger problems if the Lord of the Dead turned evil. Then what do you suggest? Ulmo raised a bushy white eyebrow. Well, if you insist, I did just receive a prayer from noble Arafinwe. And? He needs a way to Angamando. He's the king of Noldor and Valinor. Any orc would be happy to deliver him. Not as captive, you dense fool. Why don't you send your swans? They have little love for the Noldor. So you aren't going to help at all. I'm learning to delegate. I will make the stream the elves found powerful enough to transport them swiftly. But the method of transport is your department. I do not recommend logs. The Eldar seem to dislike that idea. Namo stood up at once. Maybe he could shape his Vana into a mighty raven or something strong enough to carry the elves. No. What? He asked. I don't want you going near Melkor. Lord Manwë isn't wrong when he says this isn't our fight. Help, Namo. Do no more than that. Simply find them something that floats. You are insufferable, Namo said. Then he left and wandered towards the docks. But all the ships were being used to evacuate the Falathrim. Then he eyed a collection of empty wine barrels. Anida was the first to reach what she had thought to be a small stream leaking from the crumbling hills behind her. But perhaps her eyesight was playing tricks on her, for there before her was a swiftly flowing river. She would have questioned where the water came from, but then she saw the 5 large wine barrels. A note in an elegant hand was pinned to the first one. Lords Namo and Ulmo, hear your prayer. Fly swiftly and have courage. She wasn't sure whether to scoff or cry. They sent us wine barrels? Fingolfin asked, astonished when he arrived and took in the stream. This type of behavior I would expect from Greycloak, but from the Valar themselves. Fingolfin nudged him. Have a care how you speak, brother. Who is Greycloak? Nerdanel asked. Our esteemed neighbor in Doriath, Erwin's uncle. Oh, Elwe, the Teleri Eleth asked. Yes, Fingolfin answered. I've never met him, Erwin admitted. Well, he likes your children well enough, but he despises me and hates the Fëanorians only slightly less than Morgoth. Fingolfin cleared his throat. We can worry about the extended family later. We have a brother to rescue, and the Valar did hear our prayer. Everyone looked at the wine barrels and the raging river with much dampened enthusiasm. Anata decided that such staring was a waste of time. She grabbed the nearest barrel and dragged it to the bank. Her husband sighed, but followed right behind, as did Nerdanel. Erwin and Fingolfin took a moment longer, but soon they too had their barrels. Let's go! She shouted and thrust the barrel into the water. The dark-haired wife of Fingolfin leapt into the barrel, and soon she was flying down the stream. Goodbye, fair husband! She called from a distance. You cannot catch me! What, woman? Fingolfin shouted back, and then he was in a barrel as well, using his hands as paddles. But he was not so skilled in river navigation, and quickly his barrel spun so that he was facing backward. The former king watched as Nerdanel ping-ponged between the banks, but she was grinning. Fingolfin and Erwin took up the rear, the latter using her trident to help stabilize the unwieldy barrel. This is going to be a day to remember, he thought to himself. Holding onto the rim of the barrel, he used his core strength to rotate himself to be facing forward once more, as though his wife just ahead. He smirked. How you bring out my competitive side, my love. He scanned the wide, churning water until he found what he was looking for. A sturdy branch felled from some tree or another. He tried to make a reach for it, but his arms were not quite long enough. In desperation, he pushed with his legs against the bottom of the barrel and extended his body out towards the would-be paddle, but in doing so, the balance of the barrel tipped. Soon Fingolfin, former High King of the Noldor and Bane of Morgoth, was face-planting into the cold river water. He somersaulted once in the rapids before managing to surface where he found himself beneath his now upside-down barrel. He heard Fingolfin shout in alarm as he frantically tried to get his feet under him. His boots slipped on the muck and rock of the streambed, and the barrel over his head blinded him. But then his feet found purchase, and he realized something. He could win this race after all. Using his feet to propel himself forward and to keep himself in a straight line, he marched onward. Anita could not believe her eyes when the upside-down barrel passed her. An eddy had swept her into the base of a small hill, and she was struggling to get back out into the main current, but the upside-down one steadily paraded straight past her. "Cheater!" she shouted. "Winner!" came the muffled voice of her husband. "Not quite!" came a third voice, and Anita looked to see Erwan expertly darting down the river with her trident in hand. Her sister by marriage passed the upside-down one and then held up her weapon in victory as the stream narrowed and the river slowed into a meandering, lazy thing and the rapids dissipated. The queen in Valinor frowned at the upside-down one. She threw her trident into the sand and used both hands to stop it. "All right, Lord Brother, your unconventional ways are the second fastest, if not the least safe. I got the barrel, you can come on out." There was a splashing sound, and soon Fingolfin emerged from the water beside her. "Still, I caught my wife," he said as Erwan helped him flip the barrel to be in its proper orientation. "Surely you are my husband's brother," Nerdanel laughed. She also helped stabilize Fingolfin's barrel so he could climb back in. Then all turned and watched as Finarfin slowly entered the scene. "And here comes Grandpa!" Nerdanel laughed. "I will live longer than all of you. One has, in fact, already died." "I wonder who that would be," Anita laughed. "Come now, the journey should now be easier as long as the earth doesn't split beneath us or fire across our path." Unfortunately, both were now distinct possibilities. End of chapter 34 for the 4th recording. Stay tuned.